Do I contradict myself? Very well then, I contradict myself. I am large. I contain multitudes. Those words define more than a poet. They define a spirit, a man who believed that they live fully, meant to embrace everything. The sacred and the profane, the beauty and the ugliness, the stillness and the storm. That man was Walt Whitman, and his beard wasn't just facial hair. It was an emblem of rebellion, intellect, and nature itself. It held the dust of American roads, the ink of revolution, and the warmth of compassion. This is Beardtory, and today we celebrate the poet with a beard full of America. Welcome back, everybody, to another Beardtory. Super excited to be here. Hopefully you have been enjoying these. We're mixing it up a little bit. We're going old school. We're going new school. Let us know. What do you enjoy the most? If you have a recommendation on somebody that you want us to cover next week, let us know in the comments as well. But without further ado, the Beardtory of Walt Whitman. We're going to bring down the history, and then we're going to rank the beard, as we always do, in 5 different categories, and see if this beard cracks the top 20. So, you're probably thinking, who is Walt Whitman? Let's talk about it, because he was born on May 31st, 1819 in West Hills, Long Island, or Long Island. That was a terrible accent. New York. He was the second of 9 children born to Walter and Louisa Whitman. Simple, hardworking people of modest means. His father was a carpenter and a farmer, admired Thomas Paine and the democratic ideals of the American Revolution. His mother was gentle, spiritual, and deeply nurturing, a ground force for the young boy who would grow up to become America's voice of the common man. The Whitmans moved to Brooklyn when Walt was just a child, and the city quickly became his classroom. He left school at just the age of 11 to help support his family, apprenticing at a local printer shop. There, surrounded by letters, presses, and the scent of ink, Walt fell in love with the language. He learned to set type and to see the power of words, not just as communication, but as creation. In the 1830s and 40s, Whitman became a wandering soul of the city, a teacher, journalist, and editor for several newspapers, including the Brooklyn Daily Eagle. He was fired from the job in 1848 for opposing slavery, one of the first public stands in a lifetime of defying convention. Whitman began traveling the country, taking work where he could. In New Orleans, he saw enslaved people being bought and sold in public markets, an image that haunted him for the rest of his life. It shaped his belief that democracy wasn't just about laws, it was about empathy. By his mid-30s, Whitman started writing what would become Leaves of Grass, a revolutionary collection that broke every literary rule of its time. No rhyme, no meter, no apology. The first edition, published in 1855, contained just 12 poems, but one of them was Song of Myself, arguably the single most influential poem in American history. And yes, this was also when the beard began to bloom. Gone was the clean-shaven newspaperman. In his place stood a man with a full, wind-blown beard, gray eyes that seemed to see through you with the aura of prophet. Whitman's look became his philosophy, made visible, natural, unrefined, deeply humane and human. He wrote of the body as a divine, the soul as infinite, and the everyday man as heroic. And just like his beard, his poetry refused to be trimmed or tamed. In the 19th century America, neatness was civilization. Men, they shaved to signal order, refinement, and it was seen as respectable. But Whitman's beard, well, that was a revolution, a visual declaration of his independence. He wasn't just rejecting the razor, he was rejecting conformity. His beard was a flag for the working man, for the farmer, free spirit. It was the beard of a man who said, I am the universe made flesh. Critics, they despised him for it, not just his look. When Leaves of Green came out, many newspapers called it immoral, obscene, offensive. One reviewer said it should be sent to flames. But Ralph Waldo Emerson, the great philosopher, wrote Whitman a little bit of a letter calling the book the most extraordinary piece of wit and wisdom America has yet contributed. Emerson told him, "I greet you," at the beginning of the great career. Whitman was so proud, as he should. He printed the letter in the next edition, without asking Emerson's permission. In his work, Whitman dared to celebrate sensuality, the body, same-sex love, topics considered scandalous at the time. He saw sexuality as sacred, not sinful. That made him both a radical and, well, a pharaoh. Yet, he kept writing. Yet, he kept growing. He kept defying. Then came the Civil War, the event that would change him forever. When his younger brother, George, was wounded at Fredericksburg, Walt rushed to him. George survived, but what Whitman actually witnessed in the field and in the hospitals, it broke him open. He stayed in Washington for years, volunteering as a nurse. He visited thousands of soldiers, Union and Confederate, writing letters for them, dressing wounds, holding their hands as they died. He spent his small savings on paper for the men who had nothing left. In those tents, he found what his poetry had always sought, the human soul, stripped for all its pretense. He wrote, "I was never more filled with wonder and gratitude than at the sight of those bearded, sun-browned faces, weary, yet still smiling." He grew older, quieter, and that once fiery beard turned gray, then silver, but it never lost its wildness. To look at them then was to see a man who had been both heaven and hell in his writings, in his vision. But somehow, he was able to make peace with both. After the war, Whitman worked for the Department of the Interior until he was fired for his immoral writings. He then found employment as a clerk in the Attorney General's office, a humble job for a man who changed literature. In 1873, he suffered a stroke that left him partially paralyzed. That same year, his beloved mother died. It was an emotional blow that left him devastated. He moved to Camden, New Jersey, where he would live out the rest of his life in a small 2-story house. Though his health declined, his spirit remained immense. He published several more editions of Leaves of Grass, revisiting it until the very end. By now, his reputation had transformed. What was once scandalous had become sacred. Young writers made pilgrimages to Camden to meet him. Among them was Oscar Wilde and Bram Stoker. They described him as both gentle and powerful, a man of granite with the soul of a saint. He received letters from admirers across the world. One admirer wrote, "When I see your beard, I see the future of mankind." He spent his final years dictating poems, essays, and reflections to democracy, nature, and death. In 1891, he released his final edition of Leaves of Grass, which he called his deathbed edition. He died the following year on March 26, 1892. More than 1,000 people attended his funeral. His tomb, designed by Whitman himself, still stands in Harley Cemetery, a granite structure he called "My Final House," and etched into history with it forever is the image of that beard, flowing like the roots of the nation he sang for. Today, his face appears on murals, statues, postage stamps, and monuments. But the beard, yes, the beard, remains the most iconic part of his image. It's not just hair, it's heritage. All right, this is the moment that, well, some of you have been waiting for, where we break down one of the most iconic beards in American history. Start with fear factor. Whitman didn't strike fear through violence, but through vision. His eyes seemed to pierce into your soul. His words shook nations, and his beard carried the gravatas of a prophet. For me, I rank the fear factor 5.9 out of 10. Let's go with wisdom points, because few beards have seen as much, written as much, or inspired as much. Whitman's wisdom was vast. He understood that to understand humanity, one must first love it, flaws and all. Wisdom points, 9.8 out of 10. Intimidation level, he didn't threaten, he humbled. His calm presence and wild look made people question their own convictions. A quiet kind of intimidation that lingers in memory. So intimidation level, 6.7 out of 10. Thickness and wildness, full, windblown, and iconic. His beard grew like his poetry. Unrestrained, natural, and bold. It became the template for the American sage. A look that countless thinkers try to imitate. So for me, 8.2 out of 10. Historical impact, let's be honest, without Whitman, there might not be a modern American poetry. His beard, like his writing, symbolized freedom, rebellion, and truth. It wasn't decoration, it was declaration. So for me, 9.5 out of 10. And if my math is mathin', total score, 40.1 out of 50. And here is where he ranks amongst all the beards that we have done here on Beardtory. What do you think? Did we do it right? Did we do it justice? Or did we do it dirty? Let us know in the comments. Regardless, a beard not forged in battle, but in compassion. Not a weapon, but a witness. A beard that still speaks for the dreamers, the wanderers, and poets who believe in something bigger than themselves. So the next time you look in the mirror and wonder whether to tame the wildness, think of Walt Whitman, a man who found poetry in sweat, holiness in humanity, and freedom in his own reflection. He taught us that beauty isn't about control. It's about honesty, and that sometimes the truest version of yourself wears a beard. I exist as I am. That is enough. And for Walt Whitman, that was everything. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode of Beardtory. Guess what? We're going to do it again next week. I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully you are too. We'll be back. Take care, everybody.